The restaurant was quiet that night, the kind of quiet that comes after the dinner rush, when most tables are empty and the sound of clinking dishes fades into the back. Amber lights glowed softly above the wooden tables, and the smell of coffee lingered in the air. Behind the counter, a young waitress named Emily wiped down glasses. Her body tired, but her spirit still awake. She was used to long shifts. Every night she worked until closing, saving every tip she could to help her mother pay rent and keep the lights on. Her hands were rough from work, her shoes worn, but she carried herself with quiet dignity. She never let customers see her weariness. The door opened and a man walked in, rain clinging to his coat. His presence was quiet but strong, like someone who carried many stories in silence. Emily's eyes widened for a moment. She recognized him instantly. Yet he looked nothing. Like a star. No entourage, no noise, just a man seeking a warm corner on a cold night. He slid into a booth near the back, nodding politely when Emily approached with a menu. "Coffee, please," he said gently, his voice calm, "and maybe something simple to eat." Emily smiled, her nerves settling. "Sure thing." She returned moments later with steaming coffee and a plate of soup and bread. She set it down carefully, noticing how he thanked her with sincerity, as though he truly meant it. For a while, he sat quietly, sipping and eating without fuss. Emily checked on other tables, but her eyes often returned to him. There was something grounding about his presence, something humble. Later, when he handed her his card to pay, her heart skipped. She worked quickly, but as she swiped it, the screen flashed red. An error message appeared. Decline possible duplicate activity. Emily frowned, trying again, but the same warning appeared. She looked at the card closely and realized what it meant. Someone had cloned it. Her chest tightened. She glanced at Keanu, who sat patiently, unaware. She could have kept silent, could have simply asked for another card. But something inside her told her she couldn't. Walking back to his table, she leaned in, lowering her voice. "Sir, I don't want to alarm you, but your card shows signs of being cloned. It's possible someone is using your information." Keanu's brows rose slightly. He looked at her, his calm eyes searching hers. "Are you sure?" Emily nodded, her voice steady, though her hands trembled. "Yes, I've seen this before. Sometimes customers only find out weeks later, when it's too late. I thought you should know now." A silence stretched between them. Then Keanu gave her a small, genuine smile. "Thank you. You didn't have to tell me. Many wouldn't." Emily shrugged, her cheeks warm. "I wouldn't feel right if I didn't." He paid in cash instead, leaving bills far more than the meal's worth. As he stood to leave, he paused, his hand resting briefly on the table. "The world needs more honesty like yours. I won't forget this." Emily watched him go, his figure disappearing into the rainy night. She felt something strange in her chest, a mixture of relief and curiosity. She thought that was the end. Just another night at work, just another customer she would never see again. But the next day, everything changed, because when she came back for her evening shift, there was an envelope waiting at the counter with her name on it. The manager said a man had dropped it off quietly, leaving no explanation. Inside, Emily found a handwritten letter, and taped to the corner of the page was a small, shining key. Her hands shook as she read the first words. "Dear Emily, you may not know how much your honesty meant to me last night. This key belongs to something I want you to see. It's not just a gift. It is an answer to what you gave me. Trust." Emily's breath caught. Her world, so ordinary and heavy with struggle, had just cracked open into something she couldn't yet understand, and in that moment she realized her simple act of truth had set into motion a chain of events that would change her life forever. Emily stood frozen behind the counter, staring at the letter and the small silver key in her hand. The weight of it pressed against her palm, heavier than it should have been. She reread the words again and again, her heart pounding. It felt impossible. People like her didn't receive letters from men like Keanu Reeves. She was a waitress in a modest diner, someone who lived tip to tip, paycheck to paycheck, yet here she was, holding something that promised more than just gratitude, her manager. A kind older woman named Martha peeked over curiously. "What is it, dear?" Emily hesitated, then tucked the letter quickly into her apron. "Nothing important. It's just a thank you note." She wasn't ready to share this yet. It felt too strange, too personal, as if the words belonged to her. Alone. When her shift ended, she walked home through the drizzle, her mind spinning. The key was small, ordinary in shape, but its meaning wasn't. What did it open? A box? A door? A secret? In her tiny apartment, she unfolded the letter again. Beneath the first lines, she noticed something she had overlooked in her rush. Anne. Address written neatly at the bottom. Go here. Trust what you find. She bit her lip, doubt creeping in. What if this was a mistake? What if she was reading too much into it? But then she remembered the look in his eyes the night before. Steady. Honest. It hadn't been a look of a man playing games. It had been real the next morning. After dropping her younger brother off at school because, yes, she carried that responsibility, Tumali took a bus across town. Her mother worked long hours at a factory, so Emily often filled in as both sister and second parent. Her brother didn't know how much she sacrificed to keep their small family afloat. The bus rattled past streets she rarely visited, wealthier neighborhoods where the houses stood tall and the air seemed different, cleaner. When she reached the address written on the letter, she froze. Before her stood a small, quiet bookstore. Its windows were lined with shelves of second-hand novels, the kind she loved but rarely had time to read. She stepped inside, the bell above the door chiming softly. The smell of old paper and coffee filled the air. Behind the counter sat a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and silver hair. She looked up, smiling warmly. "You must be Emily." Emily blinked in shock. How do you know my name?" The woman chuckled. "Because Mr. Reeves called ahead, said you'd be coming." Her heart raced. He did. The woman nodded, reaching beneath the counter. She pulled out a small locked box and placed it gently in front of Emily. "He left this for you," said the key would explain everything. Emily's hands trembled as she pulled the key from her pocket and slid it into the lock. It turned smoothly. Inside the box lay a simple notebook, its cover worn, its pages filled. With handwriting on the first page in Keanu's writing were the words, "This bookstore saved me once. Years ago, when I was lost, the woman here gave me work, gave me books, gave me hope. I bought it to keep her dream alive. Now I want to share it with you. The key is not to money or fame. It is to a door of possibilities. Read these pages, and you will see why I chose you." Emily's chest tightened, tears stinging her eyes. She turned the page and found story after story, memories written in ink, moments of struggle, loss, kindness, and survival. It was not a diary of a celebrity, but the heart of a man who had lived through storms and still believed in giving, the old woman behind. The counter watched gently. "He said you'd understand, said you remind him of himself, once honest, humble, and stronger than you realize." Emily closed the book, her hands clutching it as if it were a treasure. She had walked in, expecting mystery, maybe even fear. Instead, she had found something greater. Trust passed like a torch, and for the first time in her life, she wondered if her world was about to grow bigger than she had ever dreamed. But what she didn't know was that this gift was not just a gesture, it was a test. One that would soon place her in the middle of choices that could change everything for her family, and even for Keanu himself. Emily carried the notebook home as though it were made of glass. Her fingers traced the cover, her mind replaying every word she had read inside that quiet bookstore. The stories were not of fame, not of red carpets or cameras. They were of loneliness, of finding unexpected kindness, of choosing to keep going when everything felt broken. That night, after her brother had gone to sleep and the apartment had fallen silent, Emily opened the notebook again. The pages smelled faintly of ink and time. She read about Keanu's early struggles, about days when he couldn't afford more than a single meal, about nights when strangers had shown him small mercies that meant everything. On one page, a line caught her breath. Sometimes the smallest act of honesty lights the path for someone lost. That is why I listen closely when life places such people before me." Her eyes burned with tears. Had her one moment of honesty warning him about the cloned card truly meant that much? She thought about her own life, about the long hours. At the diner, the bills stacked on the counter, the nights when she lay awake wondering how long she could keep carrying the weight. She often felt invisible, like no one saw how hard she fought. But in that moment, through his words, she felt seen. The next day, she returned to work. The diner buzzed with chatter, the smell of frying oil filling the air. Martha noticed the faraway look on her face. "You're different today," the older woman said gently. "Lighter somehow." Emily smiled faintly. "I think something good is finally happening." She didn't explain more, but Martha squeezed her shoulder, as if to say she didn't need to, when her shift ended. Emily tucked the notebook into her bag. She wanted to return to the bookstore, to speak with the woman again, maybe to understand more. But when she arrived, something unexpected happened. The woman at the counter handed her a sealed envelope. "He left this for you," she said. Inside was a short note in Keanu's handwriting. "Dear Emily, if you are reading this, it means you opened the book. I trusted that you would. The key is also for the upstairs room in the bookstore. I want you to use it. What you find there will explain the rest." Her hands shook as she looked up at the woman, who nodded with quiet encouragement. The staircase at the back of the store creaked beneath her steps as she climbed. At the top, a small door waited. She slipped the key into the lock, and with a soft click, it opened. Inside was a cozy room filled with shelves of books, journals, and letters. Sunlight spilled through a small window, dust dancing in the beam. On a desk lay another notebook, newer than the first, and beside it, a photograph of Keanu smiling with the old woman who ran the store. Emily picked up the new notebook. The first page was blank, but on the inside cover was another note written in his hand. "This place gave me a voice when I didn't have one. Now, I wanted to give you the same. Fill these pages with your story. Write your truth. Life matters more than you know." Her knees went weak, and she sank into the chair. No one had ever asked for her story. No one had ever told her that her words could matter. As tears rolled down her cheeks, she realized this wasn't just about him sharing his past. It was about him giving her the chance to believe that her future could be bigger than survival. But even as hope rose in her, fear followed. Because with opportunity came risk. And she had spent her whole life protecting her family from risk. That night, back in her apartment, she stared at the empty pages. Her pen hovered, unsure. Then she thought of her brother sleeping in the next room. She thought of her mother's tired smile, of the bills she hid from both of them, and slowly, with trembling hands, she began to write. What Emily didn't know was that the words she started spilling onto those blank pages would soon pull her into a journey far beyond what she imagined, one that would not only test her resilience but also connect her life to Keanu's in ways she could never have foreseen. The next days felt unlike any Emily had ever lived. After long hours at the diner, she would hurry home, open the notebook, and write. Words poured out of her, stories she had never told anyone. She wrote about her father leaving when she was a child, about the endless shifts at the diner, about the way she sometimes cried in the bathroom so her younger brother wouldn't hear. She wrote about Hope Tooth, the way she dreamed of studying literature. It's the way books had always felt like friends who never left. For the first time, her struggles felt lighter. Putting them on paper made them real, but also made them something she could carry. One evening, as she sat in the bookstore's upstairs room, filling page after page, the old woman appeared at the door. "You write with honesty," she said softly. "Most people hide their truth, but you lay it bare. That takes courage." Emily lowered her eyes, embarrassed. "I don't know if it's courage. I want to keep it all inside." "Anymore?" The woman smiled. That's exactly what he said when he wrote his first story here. The mention of Keanu made Emily pause. She hadn't seen him since that night in the diner, and part of her wondered if she ever would. Was this just his way of passing something on and stepping out of her life again? The woman seemed to read her thoughts. He doesn't give gifts lightly, dear. If he chose you, it means he believes in you. Emily pressed her hand against the notebook, her chest heavy with a mix of gratitude and doubt. Days turned into weeks. Every time she wrote, she left the pages in the upstairs room. And every time she returned, she noticed subtle changes of pen she didn't remember leaving. A notebook shifted slightly on the desk. She began to wonder if someone was reading her words. One evening, she found a note tucked into the notebooks. Pages, it was short, written in the same careful hand. I've read your words. They are raw, painful, and beautiful. Do not stop. Your voice carries strength you do not see yet. Her breath caught. Keanu had read her writing. Not only that, he understood it. That night, as she left the bookstore, she noticed a figure standing across the street under the glow of a street lamp. Tall, quiet, familiar. Her heart raced. She crossed the street slowly, her voice trembling. You came back. Keanu's eyes softened. I never left, Emily. I've been here watching your courage grow. She shook her head, overwhelmed. But why me? I'm no one. I'm just a waitress trying to keep my family afloat. He stepped closer, his voice calm but certain. You are someone. You are honest when the world often isn't. You give when you have little to spare. It matters more than you know. In your words, they hold power. You can't see it yet, but they can change lives. Tears welled in her eyes. I don't know how to believe that. Then let me believe for you, he said gently. For a long moment, they stood in silence, the city's night sounds humming around them. Emily felt something stir inside her, something she hadn't let herself feel in years. Hope, but hope, she knew, was fragile. And just as it began to bloom, life reminded her how quickly it could break. The next morning, she returned home to find her mother sitting at the table. A stack of unpaid bills spread out, her face pale with exhaustion. We're behind again. Emily, her mother whispered. If we don't catch up, we could lose the apartment. The fragile thread of hope in Emily's chest tightened into fear. No matter how much she wrote, no matter how much kindness she received, reality was still waiting, and she couldn't help but wonder, was this gift from Keanu really the beginning of a new life? Or was it a dream that would slip away the moment the weight of survival pulled her down again? Emily sat at the kitchen table late into the night, staring at the stack of bills. The words blurred on the page, numbers twisting into shadows that weighed on her chest. Her mother had gone to bed, weary from another double shift, and her brother slept peacefully in the next room. Unaware of the storm brewing inside their home, she pressed her hands against her face, whispering, how much longer can I keep this together? The notebook lay on the counter, unopened. She couldn't bring herself to write tonight. The pages had become her sanctuary. But now they mocked her, reminding her of dreams she might never reach if her family drowned under debt. The next morning, she forced a smile at the diner, serving coffee, clearing plates, listening to customers complain about small inconveniences she would gladly trade her burdens for. Martha, her manager, noticed the shadows under her eyes. What's wrong, dear? Just tired, Emily whispered. That evening, she returned to the bookstore. She climbed the creaking stairs to the small room, the notebook heavy in her hands. When she opened it, she froze. Another note waited for her, tucked between her own words. Struggles don't end when hope begins. I know what you're carrying. Let me help. Her heart pounded. She looked around the quiet room, half expecting him to appear. Instead, silence wrapped the space. The next day, as her shift ended, she stepped outside the diner and found him waiting. Keanu leaned against a lamppost, his expression gentle but unreadable. You read my words, she said softly. He nodded. Yes, and I see more than the words. See the weight you carry. Her voice broke. I don't want charity. I don't want to be a burden. He stepped closer, his tone steady. This isn't charity. This is trust. The same trust you gave me when you told me about my card. You didn't have to, but you did. You gave without asking. Now let me give without you asking. Tears filled her eyes, but why me? Out of all the people you could help because you didn't see me as someone untouchable, he interrupted gently. You saw me as a person who could be hurt, and that's rare. Emily looked down, unable to speak. He reached into his coat and handed her another envelope. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was not money as she feared, but an invitation, a writing workshop. She whispered aloud, staring at the printed flyer. Yes, Keanu said. People who care about stories. People who will hear your voice. You belong there. Her chest tightened. But I can't. I don't have time. I don't have money. My family, Emily, he said softly. Sometimes we think sacrifice means giving up everything for survival. But true sacrifice is giving yourself the chance to live, so the people who love you can see you become who you're meant to be. His words sank deep, breaking through the walls she had built around her heart. That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The envelope rested on her nightstand, the flyer glowing faintly under the lamplight, where years her life had been. About survival. About making sure her brother had shoes for school, and her mother had enough food after long shifts. But now, for the first time, there was a chance. Small, fragile. Terrifying for something more. She didn't know if she was strong enough to take it. But the next morning, when she opened the notebook to write, her pen moved with more certainty than ever. She wrote not about fear, but about choice. About how sometimes storms don't destroy, they uncover, and as she closed the notebook, she knew one thing for certain. She would go to that workshop. What she didn't know was that her decision would bring both light and conflict. Her closer to a future she couldn't yet imagine, and closer to Keanu, whose kindness carried its own secrets. The workshop was held in a small community center downtown. The building looked plain from the outside, but inside the rooms buzzed with energy. Voices filled the air, people reading, writing, sharing their stories aloud. Emily stood at the door for a long moment, clutching the flyer in her hand. Her nerves threatening to drag her back home, she almost turned away. But then she thought of her brother, of her mother, the words Keanu had spoken. Sometimes storms don't destroy, they uncover. She took a deep breath and stepped inside. The first session felt overwhelming. Others read their stories with confidence, their words flowing like they had been doing this for years. When her turn came, Emily's voice shook as she opened her notebook. She read a piece about the diner, about the loneliness she sometimes felt while serving endless faces that never remembered her name. When she finished, silence hung heavy. Then someone whispered, "That was beautiful." Soon the room erupted in soft applause. Emily's chest ached with something new - recognition. After the session, a woman approached her. "You have a gift," she said warmly. "Your words are honest. Don't ever stop." Emily walked home that night under the city lights, her notebook clutched to her chest. For the first time, she didn't feel invisible. The weeks passed quickly. She attended every workshop, filling page after page. Each time she returned to the bookstore, she found small notes from Keanu, encouragement, advice, reminders that her words mattered. Though he didn't always appear in person, his presence was constant, like a steady flame. But one evening, as she closed up her notebook after class, she found another envelope slipped between the pages. Her breath caught as she opened it. Inside was a short letter. "Dear Emily, you may think this journey is yours alone, but it is ours. You gave me honesty when I needed it. I gave you a key to show you how much your truth mattered. I want to give you something more. Tomorrow, meet me at the bookstore. Bring your notebook. It's time." Her heart raced. Time for what? She whispered. The next day, she entered the bookstore. The old woman smiled knowingly and gestured upstairs. Emily climbed the creaking steps, her notebook heavy in her hands. Keanu was waiting. In the small room, standing by the desk, where she had poured out her soul, his expression was calm, but his eyes held something deeper: pride, maybe even hope. "You came," he said softly. "Of course," she whispered, her throat tight. He gestured to the desk. A manuscript sat there, her words, typed and bound. She froze. "What is this?" she asked. "Your story," he said simply. "I had it prepared, not finished, not polished, but enough to show you what you've built." Your voice belongs in the world, Emily. And now it will be. Tears blurred her vision. I don't know what to say. Say nothing, he replied gently. Just keep writing. Keep living. The world will hear you. She set her notebook beside the manuscript, her hands trembling. The weight of years of struggle, of invisibility, began to lift. For the first time, she believed in her own worth, Daniel. And her mother would later hold her finished book in their hands, their eyes shining with pride. Martha at the diner would smile knowingly, telling everyone that she always knew Emily was meant for more, and Keanu he would step back into the quiet, never asking for thanks, never seeking recognition, just as he had been sheltered by kindness. Once, he had passed it forward. But for Emily, the lesson was clear. A single act of honesty had unlocked a door she never knew existed. Behind that door was not just opportunity, but a future built on courage, trust, and the reminder that her story mattered. Because sometimes the greatest gifts are not money or fame or even success. Sometimes the greatest gift is simply the belief that your voice deserves to be heard, and all it took was a warning in a diner, a letter, and a small silver key.